Hello and welcome to this spotlight game of Blodir versus Blackheart. This is of course part of our best of 7 between Blackheart and various top ranking players, and in this case it is Blodir. So we've got a game coming up for you right now. It is on Craftious Maximus, and we have got Blodir of course against Blackheart. Now this is part of the best of 7, and this is one of the maps in the map pool, and it is an interesting one. So we've got a main island in the center here. Most of you probably already know this, but we'll go through it anyway. So we've got a main island in the center. It's surrounded by water, and there are a number of islands, and they've all got mass extractor points on them. So it does pay to get an early transport out and take some of that, and also get some engineers out into the water, and we'll see how these guys are going to be able to fight for the territory on land and in water. So in the north we have got Blackheart. He's going his usual light purple colour, and he has opted for Seraphim in this case, and that is probably going to be because Zoes. Of course, those are the T1 hover artillery for Seraphim, and those guys are going to be able to make all kinds of nuisances of themselves hovering around the water. So we've got a first land down. We can see he's grabbing his mass extractors, and he's getting that first hydro up with that first engineer out of the factory. Let's go and take a look at how Blodir is getting on. So he has got pretty much the exact same build. He's got his first land factory up. He is going for his hydro and the mixers, and then we'll see an air factory go down for him. And that is going to give him a little bit of intel and maybe some early bombers. Now, we did not see a lot of early bomber play in that first match, and we'll see if there's going to be a little bit this time around, although we could be seeing a lot more focus on Zoes zooming around the water, trying to just pick off mass extractors as they go. Alright, we have got a land factory down. We've got the air factory planned after a little bit more power for Blackheart, and we can see the expansion engineers starting to go out. So the first guy is heading up here. There's going to be a little bit of reclaim and some mass extractors going down there, and we can see there's a few nice handy underwater mixers there that Blackheart is going to be able to grab before heading back up on the beach and taking this expansion down in the south. It looks like Blodir is going for the same mixes here. He's going out in a slightly different direction with his first engineer into the water, and the next engineer expanding is actually going to go and grab a stack of reclaim and then try and secure this area here and throw down a PD. PD of course will help secure it in the short term, but as soon as Blackheart gets some artillery into the mix, that is going to be a little bit of a problem for PD because they just don't have the range to deal with those artillery, and there are going to be a lot of artillery on this map because both players are Seraphim, and that means Zoe spam. We can see the players are now starting to get a few land units out. We've actually got a first Tham out for Blackheart, so he's the first one with, well, no, I'll tell a lie, there's a Tham here for Blodir as well. So both of these guys getting a Tham out to assist that first engineer, well, really just to cut off any raids. We can see there's also a scout coming in as well, so that Selene is just going to provide a little bit of radar coverage and warn of any incoming raids. And we can see that first bomber, well, it's not a first bomber, but an early bomber out from Blackheart, and I'm not sure if Blodir is doing the same thing, but he might have anticipated that that was going to be the case because he's put an interceptor out. So that bomber is going to get spotted in just a second. Is the interceptor going to react? And unfortunately for Blackheart, it looks like he thought that ACU might have been an expanding engineer, and that's given Blodir the opportunity to target that bomber before he's actually able to take out an expanding engineer. This bomber comes in, he's looking for a target, he is managing to just evade fire from that interceptor, and he is going to stay alive for just a second longer but not be able to get a bomb away, and it looks like that was the end of that bombing run without any success for Blackheart. So unfortunately that investment has not paid off, and it does mean that he is going to be slightly behind in air. So there are a couple of interceptors out for Blodir now, and just one for Blackheart over here. There is another one coming in to assist, but at this point it is a little bit of an uphill battle because it is right over Blodir's factory. The expansion game is going reasonably well for these guys. We are looking at 21 mass income, just flicking up to 23 there for Blodir, and Blackheart is sitting on, well, 23, just flicking up to 25. So he's just slightly ahead in the mass extractor capture game, and that is going to serve him good stead to be able to get these factories up and start spamming out units. So we're going to see quite a lot of land spam coming out of those rows of factories, and Blodir doesn't yet have anything planned. He does have a naval factory town, and that is going to be able to put a few frigates and maybe even a sub or two, and those guys are going to be able to roam around the outside of this map, just trying to pepper the eco of the other player. We can see that Blackheart is now biting into this nice little expansion here, and if he can hold on to this, this is going to provide a nice little boost to his eco. There are 4 mexes and a hydro, and that's going to help him out significantly. If he can grab that second hydro, that's going to increase his power capabilities quite a lot, and that'll really help him in the air game early on. And it looks like Blodir is using his ACU to take it on the on the right hand side here, so that is a little bit slower because of course the ACU does walk quite slowly, but that will be really secure against raids because raids are not too effective against an ACU. We actually see, I was expecting a radar here. No, there's not a radar gone down as well. Actually, it's queued up, it's just not there yet, and that is going to provide some excellent intel. There is a Selen sitting there for Blodir at the moment, which gives a little bit of radar coverage, but at the moment he doesn't see these ACU moving up there. Of course, if you're pretty good at this game, you can realize what is an ACU just from the radar signature, because you can see how fast it walks, and when you know how fast it walks, you can spot an ACU. So he's probably going to be aware in pretty short order, if he doesn't spot it first, that there is the ACU for Blackheart wandering in here. In fact, he has a scout hovering overhead, so all of that was just blathering gibberish, because he can see the ACU anyway. We can see a nice little frigate out for Blodir. He's actually trying to chase down that engineer. Well, yeah, the engineer was going for some more expansion, and that frigate takes him out easily. Of course, frigates don't have any torpedo damage on them at all, so he's not able to damage these mexes. It's going to be a sub required, and we can see actually there's a sub out there now for Blodir, and that sub will be able to come around, and he's going to be able to take out the mexes underwater pretty well. And it looks like Blackheart has got his naval factory up. He's going straight for a first frigate. That's probably to try and, well, he's actually got 1 frigate out and a second frigate on the way, and that's going to mean that he will be able to hold this area against this frigate, even if these two guys are, even if Blackheart just loses the frigate on this one, which it doesn't look like he's going to. He's going to have the backup from a second frigate, which is just rolling off the factory now, so that is easily going to be a hold, and doesn't look like Blodir is going to be able to pick off anything with that frigate he was going for. Well, it looks like he was just trying to do a little bit of damage to the base, but unfortunately for him, terrain. And we can see there that that piece of dirt is suffering quite badly under Blodir's frigate fire, and that's going to be the end of that frigate. We can see a transport out for Blackheart now. He's going out to capture these islands. We can see the sequential drop orders. Those guys are going to be able to go and capture all of those mexes. So far we don't see anything in response for Blodir, and his air factor is actually paused right now, so that's probably indicative of a little bit of a lack of power to do anything with. I'm sure he hasn't decided that he doesn't need air. He's probably just needing that power. Well, he's sitting on actually a little bit of overflow, so he probably wants to get that factory back up and running as soon as he can and get that air power up so that he doesn't suffer too badly at the hands of Blackheart's bombers. Blackheart is actually managing to throw together a little bit of a force of interceptors there, so that is going to put him in pretty good stead. There's only 3 sitting here for Blodir, which means that he probably needs a little bit more power in the air. He's maybe focusing just a little bit more on that land game. We can see a decent number of land factories going down. Blackheart has gotten a reasonable way into that factory spam now. There's 6 factories right up the front here, and those guys are not all actually producing right now, so there's a couple of idle factories there. I'm not sure whether that's an oversight or a lack of mass potentially, but it does mean that the spam from Blodir may be able to get a little bit ahead if he doesn't have some force factories. Nice little raid here from Blackheart up the centre, so he's actually forcing the units from Blodir to come back to deal with that, because Blodir needs to get a little bit more firepower into this area just to be able to deal with that threat, and it looks like Blodir is going to have enough to deal with it. He might be going to lose a couple of mexes here, or at least one I would suggest, but I think Blackheart is, well, he's actually going to be able to evac those units. So those guys are going to get out of there. They're going to do a little bit of damage, distract Blodir's units, and get out of there and stay alive. So that's going to be a little bit of a problem for Blodir, of course, because that means that there is a threat sitting just outside his base, and as another threat comes in, if he redirects his troops to deal with these guys here, then these guys here are going to move in, and that's going to be a little bit of a problem. So Blackheart really using a double-pronged approach to just split Blodir's forces and just make him work that little bit harder to be able to counter what he's doing. And we can see that there's enough here for Blodir to deal with it, but Ilchivers. Alright, so we can see that Blackheart is maybe a little bit behind in the tech game. Let's have a look for a T2 upgrade. Alright, so the Blodir has now managed to get Ilshivers on the field, and those Ilshivers are going to be able to rip through T1 in a really effective manner. So, let's see how Blackheart deals with this. That would account for a little bit for the lack of power and the lack of units that Blodir does have on the front lines here. And he's got one Ilshiver out, and what is he doing? He's got a second one just about done. It's going to be pushing him a little bit for mass, but the firepower that those guys bring is going to be absolutely essential in clearing out the clouds of T1 that are going around. There was a little bit of an attempt at raid. We can see Blodir actually managed to do the same to Blackheart as was just done to him. And we can see Zooies. So I'm not quite sure why we haven't seen a lot more Zooey spam than this so far, but we can see that these Zooies are just rolling around the outside. The frigates are going to be able to counter those guys reasonably effectively, which is why these guys have been throwing up a few frigates, because the frigates have direct fire. The Zooies artillery is not going to be able to hit them too easily if they're microed, and the Zooies are going to struggle a little bit. But of course they can fire up and over because the arc on that, let's just, hopefully that guy's going to fire. We can see the arc. No, he's going to die before that. A little bit unfortunate. But the arc of fire from those artilleries does mean that they can get up and over the cliffs and really cause problems. There is a T1 PD in there, and I don't see any artillery, so Blackheart's actually not employed a lot of Zooies at all, and that's going to, well, they managed to take it down, but it means that Blodir is easily going to be able to hold this position, especially with the ACU in play, and it looks like there is probably a little bit of damage done to the eco over there, but Blodir is holding the north reasonably well. It is pretty secure, but there are a few bombers out. The air game for Blackheart is pretty good, but he needs to get those interceptors into play to actually take out the air force for Blodir, and it looks like maybe not a great turn. He does have the numbers to be able to take it out and win air, which will secure the area for these bombers to float around and do as much damage as they can. There is a T1AA, that's a nice touch there from Blodir, and that was able to easily take out that bomber because T1AA, pretty effective, high muzzle velocity, hits the bombers quite easily and was effective there at bringing that guy down. Now we've got the Ilshiver at the front. There is definitely a numerical advantage for Blackheart here. There's a lot more T1, but this Ilshiver at the front is going to be really handy. Unfortunately for Blodir, there are a couple of Ilshivers at the back here, so he's going to have to watch out, and he can't push too hard in the centre there because Blackheart is now matched him on the T2 game, and that's going to be problematic. But he does, well, actually Blodir's now managing to do a little bit of a a two-pronged approach and hit Blackheart from two sides at once, trying to do essentially the same thing as we've just done to him, and hopefully for Blodir he's actually going to be able to get into the base and do a little bit of damage. There is an Ilshiver coming up in support there, so that is a reasonable amount of firepower in that group, and he's actually done a really good job of distracting the unit down here, and that's opened up the way for these units to get right up into the base, and that could cause problems. There are some gunships though, so it looks like Blackheart has shifted up to T2 air. He's got some T2 gunships in play, and that is going to be able to deny. Well, actually there is a flag. That flag is taking fire from the ground, so unfortunately it is going to go down before it's able to do too much damage to that gunship, but at least Blodir is aware that he does need flak in there, and he's mixing it into the army just to make sure he can take out that air. Unfortunately, with no flak, that gunship is free to roam around and just do damage, and it looks like Blodir is maybe a little bit behind in getting that raid right up into the base. If he had taken the opportunity to get right up into the base here for Blackheart, he may be able to take out that T2 PGN. He might have been able to do a little bit of damage, but unfortunately those units did just sit static for a little bit too long, and they lost ground, and now they've just become reclaim for Blackheart to pick up. And in terms of reclaim, it looks like Blackheart, he's actually slightly behind in the eco. He's sitting on 59, 57 mass income, and Blodir is up on 67. So I'm not sure whether that is mainly due to T2 upgrades or what, but we can see that there's actually some really nice raiding going on. Those T2 gunships for Blackheart really paying for themselves there and getting around into Blodir's main base and managing to do quite a lot of damage. So that's a little bit of a problem for Blodir. He is managing to keep ahead in the eco game though. He is sitting on 75, he's taken over to 81, that's probably a bit of reclaim, and that is going to be reasonably effective at being able to outspam Blackheart. There is an ACU in the centre there, doesn't look like he's got a gun upgrade, but he's being used well, I thought perhaps he was doing a bit of reclaim, but in fact he's just sitting there taking some Zooey fire, which is probably not the best idea. But now we've got a group of Zooeys coming around the outside, which maybe is going to be a little bit hard for Blodir to deal with. He doesn't have a lot in the water. He really could do with a few frigates here, and he really needs to be able to deal with this gunship that at the moment has pretty much free reign to just hover around his base. And well, there's actually a flak moving in now, which it looks like it can't quite reach the gunship. It does need to wander right around up onto the plateau there and be able to fire up, but that's just about dead. There we go, it goes down. So Blodir managing to just get enough anti-air up to deny that, and now he has to figure out a way to deal with those Zooeys, because he doesn't have a Zooey cloud of his own. He doesn't have any frigates. He's actually still producing subs by the looks of it, and he really needs to be able to deal with those Zooeys and stop them wrecking his eco. If they get in and manage to take out his power, that is going to be a big stall for him, and that's going to be a little bit hard to come back from. A very nice little move here from Blodir, managing to push through. He has only got, I think, one Ilshipper left in that mix, and there's a single Ilshipper. That's not going to last too long. There's a big pack of T1, but that does mean that he is going to nicely take out this expansion, and there is actually a nice big cloud of subs floating around here. So Blodir opting for almost exclusively subs, and that'll be just purely to fight the navy that Blackheart is putting out around here. And Blodir does have a numerical advantage in this theatre, and he is going to be able to do that and take out Blackheart's forces. He might even be able to push Blackheart completely out of the water, which is going to be a problem because there's actually a couple of T2 mixes there, and that's going to hurt Blackheart even more. So if this subs here were actually to move in, that's going to be a serious problem for Blackheart's eco. So Blodir's actually looking in a really strong position now. He's got a nice advantage in the eco game. He's managing to hold off the air for now, which is a pretty good effort, although there are a number of gunships coming in. That last encounter though, it left Blodir with a decent air force left after clearing away Blackheart's forces away over its base, and I'm not sure if he's got quite enough to deal with all of Blackheart's air, but he will at least be able to chase off these gunships because Blackheart hasn't responded. There he goes now, those interceptors are coming in, and it looks like the gunships are pretty much going to get hammered. Well, there's still a couple left, and that's the end of Blodir's forces. So because they were focused on the gunships, they pretty much all died to that crowd of interceptors there coming in from Blackheart, and that is going to leave a couple of those gunships free to just smash away at those T1 and T2 units, and that's going to be a little bit of a problem. That is going to have to retreat. So that is a big back off there. Blodir did manage to clear out some of the eco. He's doing a nice job of that, but he isn't going to be able to push forward and get up into the back of Blackheart's base. And these subs now are actually just sitting around doing nothing, and they're actually being reclaimed by engineers, so they do need to watch out. He probably needs to get his reinforcement subs and get in there and destroy that navy for Blackheart and really push him out of the water. But he does have to deal with this air. The air is becoming a little bit of a problem. He doesn't want to mix too much flak into his army because he does need the fighting units, but he can't go without flak because those gunships will absolutely wreck him if he does. So now he is going to produce, I'm guessing there's going to be some flak coming out of these factories. There's got to be some flak. He's got to deal with this gunship problem. He's actually sitting on a pretty significant eco advantage. He's sitting on 105 mass income compared to the 51 of Blackheart. So a massive, massive boost there for mass over what Blackheart has, and he's not putting it into the eco, but he could be putting it into tech. Let's just have a quick look at what these factories are doing. No, it looks like it's all going into spam right now, so he's just going to make sure he can win that game. He does need to put a bit more into air. It looks like Blackheart is probably realizing that he's a little bit behind in the land game and he's going to struggle a little bit. He really needs to step up his air game and use that to punish Blodir, because Blodir is just lacking in interceptors. He doesn't have a lot of output here. He's got a single air factory, and that probably compares to a couple. Well, I was just thinking there must be a couple, although we've got T2, so of course, and it's massively assisted as well. So just a single air factory for Blackheart, but it is T2 with that increased build power, and there are a stack of NGs, and they are going to be spamming out those interceptors a lot faster than Blodir can muster them with his efforts down here, which is a single T1 factory with, well, maybe a third of the number of engineers assisting. So still a big problem in the air, but in the land game, Blodir is still doing excellent, excellent work. And this is a little bit of a push here. That's a upgrade commander. He's sitting on 14,500 hit points, and he is leading a pack of Ilshivers. There's a lot of firepower in there, and Blodir doesn't have a lot to deal with it. He's got a little bit of T1 at the front. All of his PD has already gone down. He's perhaps trying to muster his Ilshivers, and it looks like he might be trying to get some forces up that way. No, there's not a lot headed up in that direction. He is going to have to watch out because that upgraded ACU, well, actually, Blodir has opted for the T2 engineering suite, and it's allowed him to throw down a T2 PD. So that's going to be able to do a little bit of damage to all the incoming units before they get in range. And, well, looks like he's just going for another bank. So he's just spotted what is going on. He's spotted that Blackheart is on his way in, and he's trying to get his ACU out of there because he realizes that now he could be in a little bit of trouble because there's a lot of ill shivers in that mix. That T2 PD is not going to last too long against an overcharging ACU, and Blodir has just sent in what he has of his T1 and T2 units in the area, and they have just gone down really quickly. So it looks like he's actually making a beeline for the water. He knows that once he gets underwater, these guys are not going to be able to do anything to hurt him, but he's got a little bit of a struggle on his hands to be able to actually repel this big bulk of ill shivers. Now that does leave the rest of the map a little bit undefended, and it does mean that Blodir could perhaps push through, but at the moment he is really focused on this area here. He's managed to pull quite a lot of T1 into the area. He's getting a reasonable amount, and he's actually got a little bit of flak that's going to do a lot of damage to that hovering crowd of interceptors. And it looks like Blackheart, a little bit of flight power, but it's starting to wane, and that ACU is taking a lot of damage. He's down to 8,200 hit points, and Blodir taking the opportunity to throw down another PD. He will have to be careful that it is not behind a little bit of a ridge, because these PDs are direct fire, and anything in their way are going to be a big problem when it comes to actually hitting them. Now that T2 PD is going to struggle a little bit to chew through just a sheer number of hit points on these guys. Blackheart actually throwing down a T1 PD, and he's throwing down a few more, so he's going for a little bit of PD build here, maybe trying to creep forward, and that PD will easily be within range of the T2 PD, and it's going to be quite effective in stopping Blodir's fire base. Blodir just continuing to use his T2 engineering suite just to pump out those PD, just to try and do as much as he can to stop this force from Blackheart. There's still a lot of ill shivers though, and that is still a big problem, and there's T1 PD going down for Blackheart. Blodir should perhaps shift up to the T1, or shift down you could say, to T1 PD, just to get them out a little bit faster, because they are of course faster to build. They have a little bit less range, but they still have high DPS, and there we go, he's actually shifted to T1 there. He's throwing down some T1 PD, and he's going to need to get a few more of those down to be able to counter this. This is what you would expect to see from a comm drop, but of course it wasn't dropped. He just wandered in there and he started throwing down those T1 PD, and the big crowd of ill shivers are being a real problem for Blodir to actually deal with. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Blodir having to gap it into the water. And one option that Blodir does have that we haven't seen a lot of is using his overcharge on those ill shivers, because those ill shivers are actually reasonably tightly packed. A single overcharge would be able to do amazing amounts of damage and really hurt Blackheart's forces. And unfortunately for Blodir, it looks like the concentrated effort of Blackheart is actually going to be able to punch through a little bit. He's throwing out PDs as fast as he can. He's coming back with his ACU, throwing down some more T2 PD just to get that extra range to be able to hit those ill shivers as they try and march forward into his base. And it looks like Blackheart has realised there's just a little bit too much on the field for Blodir, and he's coming up, and he looks like he's trying to kill Blodir's ACU with a T1 PD. So he's throwing down another T1 PD. He's going to start peppering away at the ACU with that. Blodir, of course, is still sitting on a lot more hit points than Blackheart is, but he's taking a lot of damage from those Nothers. That is a excellent snipe. He's trying to get into the water. He's sitting on 4,200 hit points. Those Nothers are coming around for another path. There's just not enough in the way of air for Blackheart, or for Blodir, and he's getting into the water, and it looks like he will actually just survive that, but that does deny the build capacity. So interestingly, Blodir is sitting on a massive amount of income compared to Blackheart, but Blackheart has really concentrated those forces in the centre. He's got a lot more ill shivers online than Blodir has managed to muster, and I'm not quite sure where Blodir's income is actually going right now. He's got a 103 on the scoreboard, and that is not looking like it's going into ill shivers, and it looks like probably the entire 67 mass of Blackheart is being pumped into ill shivers, and actually Blackheart has popped out some torpedo bombers now. So it looks like even though Blackheart was behind on eco, Blodir is going to actually, well, it looks like he's probably going to have a little bit of a problem staying alive for the next couple of minutes, because torpedo bombers, so that massive advantage in the air has really let Blackheart take this game out, because he was all rights, he should have been well behind, but he managed to use the advantage that he did have, so he was ahead on air quite significantly. He used that, he exploited it, and he was able to get in there and just really hammer away the ACU. I'm not sure that he quite has enough to get into the base of Blodir's ACU, well, Blodir's base, but of course you don't need to do that. All you need to do is kill this guy here, 300 hit points left on the clock, and boom. So that is some really excellent play there from Blackheart. Behind an eco pretty much the entire game, he was at a 2-to-1 disadvantage at some points, and he still managed to come back, and he used that air advantage. So he didn't have a lot of advantages, but he really exploited what he had and was able to destroy Blodir's ACU. Even though Blodir's still got a heck of a lot online in his base here, he really should have been able to deal with that, but unfortunately he wasn't able to, and there goes the ACU. So Blackheart, just to make sure, just in case he needs to throw down some torpedo launchers or something like that. So Blodir, unfortunately, not able to come back from that air assault, and that brings the second game to victory for Blackheart.